Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Zdenek's English podcast. And in today's episode, I have got a really special guest. Actually, today's episode is a follow up to episode 262, which I published back in 2019, which was called Breaking the Glass Ceiling with Marek Kickowiak. In that episode, I spoke to Marek, who is the founder of TEFL Equity Advocates and Academy. And I spoke to him about a topic which is very personal to me, and it's native speakerism. It's a topic which I hope my guest will shed some light on. And basically, this is something that personally affects me because I'm a non-native English teacher myself, as you know, and I have mentioned this on the podcast before. This podcast is also recorded as a video, so you can access it on my YouTube channel, on Teachers Zdenek YouTube channel. But without further ado, let's introduce our guest today. Hi, Meri.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Good to have you here.
And hearing about, breaking the glass ceiling and your introduction about having spoken to Marek, that's excellent because I've also really gotten into learning about what native speakerism is thanks to his website, and
Yeah.
equity advocates, especially a lot of useful information there to be studied and implemented in our daily lives, how to speak about native speakerism in a very open way. It's what we have to do as non-native English speaking teachers, but as well, native speakers can do that too when they learn.
Absolutely. And this is exactly why I invited you onto this podcast, because Meri, you're someone that speaks up for non-native teachers like myself. And I
Mhm.
believe some of the listeners to this podcast, you fight for our rights. And I thought you would be an excellent guest for my podcast and someone I genuinely wanted to talk to. Okay.
Thank
So
you. No pressure. Yeah, I think actually I was thinking, since I started my Instagram channel talking about this, it's been really eye-opening for me because I really had to reflect on why I even started it and why this was such an important topic for me. And I
Mhm.
realized that, I've looked for formation and teaching. When I started teaching, I never realized that this was even the issue.
Yeah.
Thinking, about native speakerism being this ideology, this widespread belief that people coming from, a specific country, people who are defined as native speakers are somewhat better in the
Mhm.
ELT industry, which is English language teaching industry. I never considered it until uh, I approached, well, I reached, let's say, a level where I had, some sort of self-respect for knowing
Yeah.
how I was teaching and what I was doing. And only then did it just occur to me that, oh, wait a minute, it doesn't matter what I know and how well I know it, but I will always be categorized as the non-native speaker. And
Exactly.
I don't know if it happened to you before as well, when you were
Yep.
totally discriminated against simply because of your name or your nationality. And before, it never occurred to me that it was just, a problem to be dealt with. I just thought, oh, well, it is what it is. But then as I advanced in my career, I thought, wait a minute, I don't understand. Why am I not given the credit, for all the
Exactly. Yes. Why are
learning?
you considered inferior? It was exactly the same with me.
Yes.
It
At
doesn't happen. It doesn't happen immediately because you even come from that, and you sort of part of the problem at the beginning, right?
Sure. And you
You
believe
I don't
that to be true. You think, well, I'm not as good as that, I'm not. And then you
Yeah.
realize, wait a minute, native speakers, the so-called native speakers, make mistakes as well, and it's not
Yeah.
an identity. You're not born into a skill set. You really have to learn to do the job. And then only then can you be, uh,
Absolutely.
insert yourself in a career path. Let's put it this way.
I was going to ask you about your personal journey that you just told me. But basically, it's the same with me. There was this moment, this kind of watershed moment. Perhaps
Hmm.
it wasn't just one moment, it was like a transition, let's say,
Yes.
when you suddenly start to realize, hang on a minute,
Yes.
something
Something.
isn't right here.
Yeah.
And then and you're right in saying that it's connected with learning to respect yourself and learning to have that, suddenly you have that confidence and that self-belief, and you're able to see that you're not necessarily worse than native speaker teachers. And then you have some colleagues as well and stuff like that. I don't want to get much
No, and
into it, but
you also think, oh my God, I might be even better. Why not? And then you realize you start to question those things
yeah,
that people say around you. I still get people who just continuously around me say, oh, it's nice to have a mother tongue. Oh, I've studied 10 years with a mother tongue, as if it were, the best thing that they could have ever thought of, or have gained.
yeah,
And they consider that as, like a stepping stone, a milestone that they might have by having an interaction with a mother tongue or a native
yeah,
speaker. And I think those things go hand in hand, with your belief as to when you are learning the language, you're also automatically learning a culture. If that is the case, then I guess I'm not saying that native speakers are not good, not apt teachers. Absolutely not. I'm just saying that when it comes to language learning and language teaching, we are all we have to think about the profession and the career that one has made and the experience that that teacher brings to the table, and not necessarily when I look for, let's make an example. I'm looking to study Spanish. I don't necessarily need someone who was born in Spain. I need a
no,
teacher who can teach me
yeah,
Spanish and who is good, and maybe who is a teacher, I don't know, from France. I wouldn't,
yeah,
as long as one says, I've grown with this value of respecting teachers in general. So when I put, before a name, I say teacher, no, teacher Meri, teacher
yeah,
Sarah, teacher, I automatically believe that there is some, expertise within that person. And so I value that as the same as when I hear doctor, Dr.
yeah,
Martin, doctor. So it doesn't mean I don't look at the name as much as I look at the title. And don't get me wrong, titles can be very very vague and not maybe corresponded to the actual expertise of the person. I'm not saying
I
a
mean,
title.
like a degree, yeah, yeah,
Yes, like a
mm,
title, like as having something before your name that states,
yeah,
how. That is not what I think intelligence is, or how it doesn't define us in terms of how well we teach, how well we do something.
yeah,
But it also, when we do say these things, I mean, it gives us a certain impression of that person
yeah,
having
of course,
having had to go through some sort of
yeah,
education, a process. And now we call everyone teachers, regardless of whether they have followed a specific university course, or whether they have, or sometimes we judge them, where did you complete your university course? So if you did it from an English speaking country, then well done. If you
yeah,
studied English in France, in Spain, in Italy, then you're not a you'll never be as good as
yeah.
this person,
Well,
right?
well, I guess the point is that this title you're speaking about, or the degree, it's sometimes less than if your name is John or
Exactly.
Jane, right? That's the problem.
I think that what happens in language schools is that we just give that title to random people, and we just say, okay, teacher this. But teacher does not really, it's not something that they
No.
have worked to become, or they have done a 4-week course and they think that it's, they're much better than someone who has dedicated 5 years or 7 years intensively learning every, grammar features and how to explain things. And so I think it's very easy to explain. Some people say it's very hard to educate those around us to stop thinking, in this this dichotomy, of English speakers,
Yeah.
as in, well, who is a better. It's not really a discussion of who is a better teacher. I think it's just a matter of giving credit where it's due,
Yeah. And
right?
it's
And
about the results. Like if I can bring those results, or if I can make sure that you achieve those goals, that I really change your life, I inspire you as an English learner. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter where I'm from or what skin color I have or what
Yes,
my accent is, right?
yes,
As long as I do a good job and I take you from point A to point B, right? That's what should ultimately matter. Well, I think we have the right person to talk about this topic here. This is your Instagram handle at the underscore non underscore native underscore speaker.
yes. I don't know who took the non-native speaker without any underscore, but it was taken. I wish I had thought of that before. But speaking about the handle, I'm so open about this issue that I literally present myself as the non-native speaker,
I
because I
love
think
it.
that sometimes
Yep.
schools tend to hide our true identities, and they say, oh, it's Mary spelled with an Mary. No, it's Meri. It is a mistake. I'm Armenian. It was written as a translation of my name, which was written totally different, and
Yeah.
that's what's stuck, right? But the idea of making it more, American English, British English, or what
No.
have you, I just thought at the beginning, again, I never questioned it. I thought, yeah, well, okay, if it makes you happy. But now I would never do that. Like, my
Yeah.
name is Meri. It's misspelled. I'm going to keep it. I want that to reflect my identity. And in the first class, or I'm constantly changing between jobs, but I've been working at an international school where some students are defined. Your L1 is this, your L2 is this.
Yep.
I step in and I say, listen, I'm not a mother tongue speaker. I'm teaching you English L1. Does that ring a bell? Does that say anything about? So don't define yourself with this is your language
Yep.
one, this is your language two, this is, you can be all of that. You can be a polyglot, you can be bilingual. You can know a language that is not your native mother tongue. You can know it better than someone who was born and raised
Yep.
next to Buckingham Palace, and that does not change. It
Absolutely. I
doesn't
love
matter.
this approach. I love this approach. You are a rebel, I would say, because most people do it the other way around. So most people don't write that they are an English teacher from Italy or an Italian English teacher because, and
They
that's why
change.
you are here today, because it's detrimental, because that's how marketing works. It doesn't do them any favor if they put it there. They actually
I
reduce
don't
their
need to
chances.
worry about. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we live in a world where if you say who you are, where you come from, and you make it obvious that you're not a native speaker, that actually will be detrimental to your marketing strategy. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in. We both hope this is going to change, and that's part of the reason I want to talk about this today, and I want to
Mhm.
keep talking about it. And my students know I sometimes rant about it too, like you do. But I think you're much better than me. I love your videos. So if anybody wants to follow the non-native speaker Meri, a fantastic Instagram account, please do
Thank
that.
you.
The non-native speaker.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So tell us, Meri, where are you originally from?
So I'm from Armenia, and I was born and raised there with two Armenian parents. So my family is Armenian, and at the age of 6, 7, my family just decided to travel across the world, and so I've lived in many different places. So from Moscow to Buenos Aires in Argentina. I've attended an international school in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, for 3 years, and that was when I would say that was the start of my education, because that's the consistent, for 3 years consistently I went to the same school, and English became what I now call my first language. It was the language that I felt most comfortable in communicating in. So I with my sister is 6, 7 years older than me. We speak in English, and we always spoke in English inside our family. Even Armenian still remains kind of used, because my father prefers, he's very into his own identity, and rightly so. He wants to use Armenian in his family. And I always liked that, by the way, because that kept me in touch with my roots. Otherwise, I would have. I mean, I'm illiterate in Armenian. I cannot write, I cannot read, I've never read anything in Armenian. So that's actually something in my bucket list, to learn Armenian more, properly, to, better be able to communicate. That's another thing. I don't really feel like I belong to any particular country, nation, ideology, because it just opens up your mind, right? If I speak to an Armenian, I'm kind of nervous, because I'm not sure when I'm going to try to express myself, if I can use the right word. And so I'm seen as a very odd Armenian to other Armenians. And when it comes with, to speaking in English, then I'm not entirely accepted, right, as an English speaker amongst, fellow colleagues, because, okay, Meri, where are you from? Armenia. Really? And oh, how is it that you teach English? It's as
Yeah.
though, the world hasn't woken up to the idea that you can be what you want to be, really. I can literally close myself in a bunker and learn a language I've never spoken and be better at it, then I don't see why this is still something so strange, you see. It's like you wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know, someone were to take up a sport that isn't the national sport in their country, right? You talk about sports a lot, but there's always the opposite story, or something that kind of challenges that narrative of, if you are born in Armenia, then you're an Armenian
Yeah.
mother tongue because all your families are Armenian, so your dominant language should be Armenian. It's
Yeah.
not how it works. Right now, I live in Italy. Sometimes I get mistaken for an Italian teacher, and people forget that I'm not Italian. And it takes me. Oh, you're talking about immigrants, saying negative. Oh, I'm an immigrant. Oh, right. People forget. So it's kind of funny when
Yeah.
you think of it. But it's just, you have to challenge that limiting belief that people have, and it really takes, things are going to change. It's just a matter of time. Things have already changed. It's just that people are not waking up and smelling the coffee, as they say. So, okay, we live in a world where the family backgrounds, you can have 4 different nationalities within the same family. Define that, categorize that. How are you going to do that? You're going to call it a cosmopolitan, multicultural, multi-ethnical, whatever. That's going to, and is already, the norm. Non-native speakers are like 93, over 90% of the world are made up of non-native English speakers. And how many do you think of them are going to be teachers? The demand is very high to learn English as an international language. Native speakers are not going to cover that demand, and not all native speakers are going to magically decide to become teachers one day. So if you're a student, think about, when you're thinking of this discriminatory behavior, sometimes identify it within yourself and honestly say to yourself, can I teach the language that I'm dominant in? Can I go into a classroom and teach the language I'm the best at?
Hi, I'm Jolie from Spain. I like the Achievers Chamber because it's a friendly place where I can improve my English talking to people from other countries.
For more information about the Achievers Chamber, go to teachersdenek.com.
Can I go into a classroom and teach the language I'm the best at? Can I do it in front of a class? If the answer is no, then you should not be looking for a native speaker. You should be looking for a teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't say better, honestly. Yeah. So we're talking about native speakerism here. I think it has become obvious to our guest what
Yeah.
this is. So it's this widespread idea that native speakers, like if we simplify it, this widespread idea that native speakers are better teachers. And
Mhm.
as a result of that, us, the non-native teachers, we get discriminated against.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in what ways are non-native teachers discriminated against, Mary?
I ask, they're not given the right job opportunities, or maybe they are given certain classes. I've heard of so many stories, like people not being given a task, like you can't teach culture if you're teaching the language because you're a non-native speaker. I was born in Armenia. I don't know so much about Armenian culture.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's a job for somebody else to take. So they're discriminated against because they're not given, first of all, equal pay. In Asia, the situation is much worse because people are literally hired based on their nationality, the passports that they hold.
Yep.
Okay. And it's terrible because you can just search it online. If you look for jobs, they're basically giving jobs to anyone who is willing to, a native speaker, a so-called native speaker from any country, inner circle country, the usual
Yeah,
UK.
that's the problem, because it's not, sometimes it's not even, this is not even clear, because you say
Mm,
native speakers, but then there are
yeah,
certain countries which are preferred, let's say.
yes, definitely. It's we can call it, it's kind of a Western ideology, a supremacy that
Mm.
Western cultures have about
Yeah.
being superior to, there are so many other countries that have English as their official language. Yet a person who has completed their education there is still not considered a native speaker or a mother tongue speaker of the language, right? So how, to go back to your question, because I have so much to say on this, how are they discriminated against? First of all, if I want to teach as a non-native speaker, I'm required to complete a degree. I'm required to certify my knowledge of the languages. In most cases, I need to certify a C2 and above level of English.
Yep.
Okay. I need to have gone through, I don't know, a CELTA, a Delta course and all that. And still sometimes I'm still not good enough compared to, a native speaker, my native speaker counterpart who has, within a month done more, as absurd it might sound to an employer, is more apt to be the figure to place in their language school. So it's absurd if you think about it, but that's what it is. And so they self-certify. They say, they give, a declaration of, yes, my English level is C2, and they don't need to pay for it. They don't need to prepare for an exam. They don't need to go to a center and wait for 4 hours to complete their test, etc., etc. And then they're given the job without having any of this, because they have self-certified themselves as C2 level.
That's right. And this is happening mostly in Asia. It's less so in Europe, because it's actually forbidden in Europe to discriminate against non-native teachers. There is a law in the EU.
They constantly do. I know it is
But
forbidden.
it's still done, yes.
It's still very, very present. So present that, you need to, if you just go out on the street and talk to anyone about, just English teachers in general, they will all say that they want a mother tongue speaker, and they want.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, the question is, how does this make us feel? In my opinion, it's kind of like racism. Do you agree with me?
Yes, we're on the receiving end here, and it makes you really, think about all the varieties of English, right? So many countries that are maybe because of their background or their race, or they have been colonized, they don't get that official recognition. As people who, when I say I've done 3 years, I've learned English in Malaysia, no one kind of makes the connection as into how that they don't realize, so Singaporean English or any other English just does not make it to be seen as a language, or as a good enough English or a good enough model. And so what they do is then they say, okay, if you're not native, then you cannot teach pronunciation, or you might have an accent, and I don't want my son or daughter or myself, I don't want to be talking like you. So if that is the case, then why don't we just brainwash ourselves with TV series and sitcoms, and then, like actors, speak like the person that's speaking on television? That's not how it happens, right? I can listen to, I don't know, I can listen to any kind of British actor for hours and hours. I'm not going to automatically sound like them. And they think that by having 1 hour or 3 hour sessions per week is going to make you learn all the wrong ways that a non-native English teacher might, communicate. And it's just stupid if you think about it, right? How insulting is that, to say that after all that studies and time and effort that we have dedicated, we might not be able to pronounce and be intelligible, and people might not understand us, and we don't know the difference between, we can't do. I want to see how many native speakers know anything about phonemic script, and how many of them can, explain the difference between the vowel sounds and how many sounds there are in English. So, you might
It's the same
say,
with grammar. It's the pronunciation, but also grammar. It's exactly the same. How many know the difference between tenses? And
yes, exactly. I've learned when I became a teacher, I wasn't qualified at all. In fact, they called me thinking, "Oh, you're a native speaker," but I wasn't. Right? I was also on the receiving end of the problem. So, hi, we are looking for an English teacher. I'm not a teacher. You sound the part. Come and work for us. This is how I was hired at first. And my Italian students taught me about 13 years ago what a phrasal verb was. I
Yeah.
didn't have any idea, because it was as though I had been a native speaker all my life, because that was my first language. I never studied the grammar. I would use phrasal verbs, and my student was like, you used a phrasal verb. And I was like, what is a phrasal verb? Hold on, I
Yeah.
never considered that. And I learned all the grammar again at a later stage by studying to become a teacher. So
Yeah, exactly.
really,
So we are basically talking about what can make non-native teachers better teachers, right? So often non-native teachers, they know the language better than native teachers. When I say they know it better, what I mean by that is that we understand this it as a system, right? We understand the logic of it. We
mhm,
we can. It's not only about knowing the terminology, like to be able to say this is present perfect, this is past simple. No, not just that. It's about being able to explain it to our students, right? Being
yes,
able to show them how they can learn it, what things they have to be careful about, and all those things that allows us the knowledge of the English language inside out. If you have studied it like me at university, like I've studied all the linguistic disciplines, it has helped me understand how the language works, and
exactly.
that has made me a better teacher, because now I'm able to better pass on that knowledge onto on my students, you know.
Yes. And let's clarify that there are a lot of native speakers who also have learned other languages, and
Absolutely,
they are
absolutely.
very apt at doing that. However, I do discriminate against teachers who only speak one language. I really find it very hard to put yourself in your students' shoes. When you only speak one language, you can know it exceptionally well and know how
Yeah.
to teach it. But I just think that you really need to have made
Mm,
that effort yourself in being a
yeah,
learner to really understand your students. So I wouldn't say I don't
that's right.
discriminate native and
That,
non-native, only in the
that's one.
case where
Yeah, I agree with you, because that's like one trait or one quality as a teacher that is that we cannot stress enough, and that's the empathy and the ability to put yourself in your students' shoes, and that's absolutely crucial, because you know how they feel, and then that makes the learning process or the learning teaching, like when you're teaching your student, that makes it so much more effective. Whereas if you could be an excellent teacher, a native teacher who knows a lot about the English language, you could be even a teacher trainer. But if
Mhm.
you can't put yourself in your students' shoes, if you don't know how exactly they feel when they are learning the language, if you don't understand the challenges they have, the kind of big problems and they face, then you're not as effective. You're not
Yeah,
not an effective teacher, in my opinion. But
yeah. And
yeah, there
think
are
about this.
lot of
Excuse me
aspects
for
to being a good
interrupting,
teacher.
because you're giving
Sorry.
me so many things to think about. But if you think about it, when you are at university, you always have to pick not just one language if you're studying languages, but you have to pick at least two and maybe three languages, at least here in Italy, when you're studying. Let's say if you want to focalize just on English, you can't do that. You always have to choose other
Okay.
languages to have that the whole
So is that
journey.
university programs you mean? Or
Yes, yes, yes,
okay.
yes. And it just tells you, like, it pinpoints on. In my case, it's very strange because Italian was another language that I wasn't
Yeah.
born Italian, and I learned Italian when I was 13 and 14. But for instance, if you want to take it to another level, the discriminatory practices is that if I enroll in an Italian university, I have to learn I have to pick one language, and Italian cannot be one already. So you're already discriminating. You're already
Yeah.
thinking that all the people who are attending the university are Italians, right? Why can't I not do Italian? As because Italian is a very rich language and would be, it would be great to study at a very, higher level, let's put it this way. So I know Italian, I'm Armenian, I had to learn Italian, then I had to study English plus another European language. So why do they do that at university? Say I was Italian, because it's not enough sometimes to have that second. Sometimes you need to know, like, how the translations work, how you have to compare languages to one another, understand the cultural differences between. Sometimes you extend an explanation. Sometimes there isn't a specific word that can go in place of another word. So there's so many nuances, no, that you have to learn. And if you haven't gone through the university studies and you have only learned your own language to the maximum extent and maximum degree, I just don't believe it's enough. In fact, any book that you take that talks about English language teaching, there's always a sort of a comparison, and there's a whole study of people from this nationality or people from this say have this common mistake, make this common mistake, may have these problems with pronunciation. No, it's something. It's a study. It's a really it's linguistics.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you
For
can't.
me, it's like to be a really good English teacher. The question is, what makes a good English teacher? So for me, it's like a list of aspects or list of qualities, yeah, and then basically what happens is with this native speakerism is that this list is almost like completely neglected, yeah, so that they put native speaker at the top of that list,
Yes.
and everything else is as if it doesn't matter, if it doesn't exist.
I'm
But
glad you said that.
those things are equally important, basically, if not more. And it's not just one. So it's your experience, how long you've been teaching, right? It's
Mhm.
your qualifications, right? If you have learned how to teach, what methodology you use, all that, if you know how to implement it, the linguistics, how much you know the language itself, how your ability to explain. Then there are some personal qualities, like, are you patient? Are you just good at explaining things?
Simply a
There's so
student.
many aspects
There's so many
that,
aspects.
that
It's just
make a good English teacher, and it's just so reductive to
Mhm.
think that native speaker equals a good English teacher. Yeah. So
Yeah.
then let me tell you this. So I when I was teaching in Dublin in summer, I there was one non-native teacher that I thought was shooting himself in the foot by thinking the following. Yeah. So he said to me, Zdenek, but imagine you have a native teacher and a non-native teacher, and you have them side by side, and they have exactly the same qualifications, exactly the same amount of experience. I would still pick that native teacher. So this is what he said to me, and he's a non-native English teacher. I told him, this is the wrong way of thinking about it. It's even, how can you even say that? That's you're
Exactly.
a hypocrite, because you are saying exactly the same. You are exactly the same person, but you are not, because you're telling me that one is native, one is non-native. So this is hypocritical. So why is it? Why is it that so many people, including us non-native teachers, I'm sure still the majority of us is guilty of this, and we still think that native speakers are something more.
Yes, because
We,
we accuse others of what we are actually guilty of ourselves. Most frequently, we really, really um, have an issue, and we have this imposter syndrome.
yeah,
And because I think it can be, it's a very good question. It can be because of, how what we think about our own identity, and maybe this belief that has been perpetuated for so long, it has caused us to really think that um, it might be the case that maybe I'm like a second class citizen because I arrived to this in a second moment. Maybe
yeah,
my mother and father were not English speakers, and so how can I? There might be parts missing, right? But I can make this example. So each one of us, whatever language you might speak, we are full of resources, and our identities. Why do we say foster our identities? Why is it so important? Because each one of us brings something different to the table. And
mhm,
sometimes it's not just on the linguistic side, but like you mentioned earlier on, it might be the empathy, it might be on the personal side, and social skills area, soft skills, everything else, right?
exactly.
We can't speak negatively of ourselves, even though this happens on a subconscious level. It happens because when we speak, even, I mean, just pay attention now when you talk to someone who is a non-native speaker teacher. They say things like, I was born in Poland, but I'm an English teacher, right? Because it's almost, you are predicting that the person in front of you is going to interrupt you and say, well, how is that possible? And then you tend to justify yourself and you say, oh, I'm actually from because I lived all my life in the States, or I've been, I've done a course, I've
So
studied like,
basically, you're contradicting yourself. You're being a hypocrite because you don't
yes,
necessarily believe it 100% yourself. Maybe we have managed to
it's like a
instill some of
genetic
these
mechanism.
ideas in you.
That's
Maybe you understand what we are saying right now, and you say, "Yeah, this is completely true." What Meri and Zdenek are saying, we are with you. Yeah, this is exactly how I feel. But still,
yeah,
somewhere at the back of your mind, a part
because
of you still
we're
thinks
used
that.
to it. We're used to being questioned
Yeah,
about our skills
absolutely,
just because we
absolutely.
are from this. But you never hear a native speaker say, "Oh, I am American, but I speak English. I am from Detroit, but I still." No, it's kind of a given, right? It's a
Yeah,
given. So you have to put yourself. It's a very, we have to recognize it, that it's a mindset. You have
it's a
to shift
mindset
your
shift.
mindset
Yeah.
and say, and I have the best time right now in poking fun at this. I totally make fun of anyone who questions or looks at me or does da da da. I just, even to native speaker colleagues, I say something and I say, you wouldn't have expected a non-native speaker to say that, would you? And so I speak about it so much as to normalize and neutralize the fact that people can see non-native speakers as that step lower.
Yeah.
No, it's a question of doing more and better. And it's
Mm.
always, I don't know, it's just such a, it's so common to hear these debates and hear this. And I've seen people at international conferences presenting at a high level say, ah, I'm going to do presentation. Excuse me for my accent. I'm not a native. I swear I was like, excuse what?
Yeah.
Excuse you for having an accent. Who does not have an accent? Everyone has an accent.
So, when I started this podcast, this is exactly the kind of things I would say. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but we need to get there if we want to ever be considered equals. We
Mhm.
need to do exactly this. We need to undergo this almost like what to call it, like transformation or mindset shift. There is no other way, and that includes us. s- Um, we have to stop saying these things like "but," or we have to stop putting ourselves down
Mhm.
in this kind of way that you're describing. Because if we keep doing this, we are sort of
Yeah,
we are saying one thing, but then
doing
with,
another.
with the next with the next sentence or with the next action we are denying that thing.
Yes,
We are contradicting ourselves.
you're discriminating on yourself.
Yeah, yeah,
It's the same as
absolutely.
if you're looking for an Italian teacher, you're looking for a Rossi, a Bianchi, or someone with a Italian sounding surname. But that's often not the case. Like, why would you think that? So I think we're not perfect, but we have to kind of reflect on why we think the things that we do.
Yeah,
Why do we believe that certain it's a bit like saying, all Indians are good at computers, all Chinese are, it's stereotypes, all Italians
yeah,
make wonderful pizza and pasta, and all, it's very stereotypical. I mean, we all make this mistake, right? I
yeah.
think there isn't one person who hasn't ever generalized
We are all guilty of this. Yeah,
all guilty. But imagine like how sad it is when we do it to ourselves. Like, how sad is that we should
it's
think, I have stopped I catch myself, I had to train myself to get out of the habit of saying but. When people
yeah,
say, oh, they listen to me, speaking to my son, and they say, oh, I would love to have a teacher like you, that just from the sound of what they like, right? And they say, I wish you could teach me, could you teach my daughter? I said, I could teach your daughter because I'm a teacher. I couldn't teach your daughter if I was just someone, a passerby that spoke the language.
yeah.
I mean, would you really just, do you think having conversations is having lessons? Then, woof, you're always having lessons. My goodness, you step out the door, it's a lesson over lesson over. That's not it. A conversation lesson has to have a sort of an outcome, right? People
Yeah.
people trade this speaking and practicing with a native speaker. They tend to use it a lot, and in saying, we need to be, it's really good, it's really positive as long as you're practicing and having conversation. I had students that I literally sent away from wanting to just talk at me and not to me, who were saying that, I need to practice my conversation, and they would talk for 50 minutes straight. I would say, you don't have a problem with your conversation skills, but you're not listening to what you are doing wrong and what you are doing right and how
Yeah.
you can improve yourself. So I don't think you need a teacher at all.
Exactly.
Just
Well,
one example, right?
the thing is, like, I like to teach like this myself in a conversational way. I often use the method called dogme.
Yeah.
But what I say is that what I give you extra is that feedback. Yeah. So like
Yes,
feedback is super
exactly.
important. We can work on
Do you
your
just say, Zdenek, do you just say, that's wrong, we say it this way, full stop?
never.
That's the
First
explanation.
of all, what does we mean? I'm not a native speaker, right? But
Exactly.
sometimes I say native speakers say it like that, and sometimes, believe it or not, I say, "Hey, this is exactly the mistake native speakers make, but this is wrong. In the IELTS exam, this would be a mistake." I have to say all these things as well.
Yes. And in that, you see the people say, oh, culture, and you're teaching them a lot more. You're teaching them about how you can. I sometimes say we when I refer to Italians, and I include myself in that category. I say we in terms of I put myself in the English speaker category as a
Yeah,
person who knows English, and it's not wrong to do that. But it's when you say, I am just, this is the explanation. This is right and this is wrong. Sometimes it is the case that that's right and that's wrong. Yes. But you have to really know how to give that feedback in order to advance
yeah,
your students' progress and help them achieve whatever they're aiming to achieve. And it's not going to
exactly.
be interrupting them every single set. Oh, that's wrong. This is
No.
that's not
Sometimes,
me. That's
sometimes when
correct.
you don't understand what they are saying, you need to know, and this is what you learn. It's a skill you developed as a teacher, and we have been teaching for a long time. And if you also work on yourself as a teacher, because some teachers, they just stop learning, right? They just they
They
think
just
one way and they never look on the left or on the right. So obviously you have to still have an open mind. And then this is something we have acquired over the years, right? So that didn't happen overnight. So
totally.
yeah.
Exactly that. It didn't happen. It's not an accident that
No.
whoever is listening to us, if you're a teacher, it's not by accident. And people don't just give you certifications because you're pretty or that you've done 4 lesson plans and you're happy. It means something. And you should be
Yeah,
even more, you should be prouder that you're a superhero. You know
totally.
a second language to an extent that you can actually go and teach it. That's incredible. And that is just like your selling point. You're saying, my
Yeah.
second, I teach it. That should
And that's
just
why you
blow all native speakers out of the out of the
out
park.
of the equation. Well, you just need to give yourself more credit, and you need to realize that these things are super important. Like, why is it that we always focus on the negatives, right? There's this one thing, I'm not a native.
Because as
It's
teachers, I'll answer that. As teachers, we are perfectionists, and we always know that there is another step. And the
yeah,
market plays on that because they say you're never good enough. I've reached a point. I obviously can study more and do things, but when I think about progressing and getting a formal kind of another degree or a master's or something like that, I stop myself and I say, listen, why am I doing this? Is it because I need it, or is it because I can then, say I have all this that makes me maybe close to a native speaker? If that is the reason, I would say no. I don't need that. I don't need that. Other
again, you have no idea how much I relate to you, because I've been so first I got a degree, then Celta. I had to do I started doing Delta as well, and then I was like in the middle
Oh,
of doing Delta Module 3, and okay, it's a little bit out of my laziness, I admit, but at the same time, it was a moment when it dawned on me, and I realized, no, that's not what I need at this point.
yeah, yeah.
I need to start working on marketing and on my mindset.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's it, like, so it's
People don't like working on their mindset because you think that if you have to change something like that's deep within you, then it's something wrong. No one goes, oh, I want to shift my mentality today. I want to think differently. I want to
yeah,
change. People don't necessarily want to do
no,
that.
No.
it's like something that you must want to do, because no one can convince you unless you have that aha moment you're talking about. Like you're
Yeah.
like, why am I doing this? Is it
Yeah.
because I really think I'm not good I'm not, I need to advance to that level?
Exactly.
Is it
Exactly. Because the thing is, like, you always feel like you have to prove yourself, don't you? Because all those
yeah.
natives and you, even when I taught in London at a language school, yeah, and even when I was applying for the job, I was like, oh my god, I was so nervous. Oh my god, all these native speakers, I'm gonna be like one non-native there, and that's what happened in the end. I was hired, and I showed everybody that I could do it, but like I still had that imposter syndrome in me. It didn't go away. It
No, I
didn't,
understand. It
and
takes a lot of effort and
it
time.
does. It
So
does. And I was working side by side the native speakers, and they respected me, and everything was fine. Nobody was complaining about me, anything. There was no evidence for me. There was no reason for me to feel in this kind of way. But I still felt it a little bit. I still felt that inferiority complex. Like not
mhm,
less and less, I admit, less and less. Yeah.
mhm.
It's
The more
still
we
not
talk about it, the more it's
yeah,
validating, I think. It's like
yeah,
you're washing yourself away from all those negative feelings that you've had,
yeah.
no? About
And you
no.
need you need to do a lot, to even like I mean, we have come a long way, I think, like we
Mhm.
have to give ourselves credit, yeah, Mary.
Yes, yes. No, we
But
have. And,
yeah,
I often talk about, I go into the specifics, and say, the CFR, it has been changed. The native speaker is a word that people don't use to define blah, blah, blah. But then in reality, even though we have come a long way, because these changes have happened already like 20 years ago, and already 40 years ago, people were talking about,
yeah,
bilingualism and communicative approaches. And so the idea that now we talk a lot about, I think this is the key to our to non-native speakers really winning the argument here,
yeah,
is to talk about diversity and inclusion, because more and more materials and textbooks are going towards the direction of being more inclusive. They have recognized, I think National Geographic has made a whole thing about making, the listenings into, giving a variety
Spanish
of
speakers. So you got
listening.
like a person talking with a Spanish accent or with an Italian
Exactly,
accent. Yeah,
exactly. Normalizing that, right?
yeah,
And I think we should use that to our advantage, like to take that curve, to take that wave of diversity and inclusion, saying, okay, um, I am diverse.
yeah,
I might say things that are, American English mixed with Irish English with, I can mix those things because that is who I am as a teacher, and I bring all of that to the table, which is not more and not less than what a
yeah,
monocultural person brings to the table. It's just that when you go out to do business, when you go out to meet new people, when you don't pre-select what identity those people are going to have around you. So why would you pre-select the identity that your teacher needs to have? Your teacher,
exactly.
first of all, is a person, and your student, first of all, is a person. Okay, no matter the background, no matter the color, no matter how they sound. And we have to also be very, very careful at correcting certain pronunciation, because then we are canceling out the identity of those people. Because when I
Yeah.
hear someone Italian speaking in English, I hope they speak like an Italian speaking in
That,
English.
that this is part of this is little issue because then you have like I have got a student who is going who she will just tell me, but I don't want to sound like an Italian. It's like I've got this
Yes, they
student.
often say
She's
that.
amazing.
What are
She's
you?
good.
Are you French? What do
She's
you want to
amazing. She has got C2 level, yeah. And
say?
and and we are working on pronunciation, and she will tell me these things, and I try to tell her, but she won't listen to me basically, yeah. So she just wants this accent reduction, you know.
Yes, yes.
She's interested in that. So I can help her sound more
Send her
like
to a
a
workshop.
native, which is the
Identity, yeah.
expression we both hate. But basically that's what we are working on.
Yes, yes. I mean, and you
Yeah.
can help her with that, even not being native. You can absolutely do it, because you can totally say
I,
how
I'm
that
doing that, yeah. I'm
exactly. That's another thing that maybe a native speaker wouldn't be able, because what accent does that person want to sound? how do they want to sound? I always say, and David Crystal said it best, unless you want to be an impersonator or a spy, there is no reason why you should sound something other than yourself. If I
Yeah,
were to go back in time and have I have an accent, by the way, in any of the languages I speak. It's such a mixture that no one can put their finger on it. They can't just say you sound this way. They say, oh, you have an American accent, but
you
I don't
say
know.
there is no reason other than being a spy or an actor, yeah. But then
Yeah.
there is this. I listened to one podcast. I'm not going to name anyone here, but I listened to a
Uh-huh.
podcast, and the guest was a non-native teacher from Russia
Uh-huh.
who teaches accent reduction, and she's very good. She has a good accent herself. She's very good at this.
A
But
white
the way
market.
the way she markets it, yeah, she says that I will help you reduce your accent so that you are not discriminated against anymore, so that you hide your identity. That's pretty much what she says. Maybe she doesn't say it like this, but
Yes.
she turned it on its head. And I don't agree with this. I don't know how about you, but I don't agree with this. I don't think we should be doing this.
I mean, she has a point in the sense that we would be liars if we said that we haven't ever lost any work opportunities because of how we sound.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, but then it goes to a deeper level, because once
Yeah.
you know it, like you have, we say knowledge is power.
Yeah.
But you can use the knowledge also to do bad in the world, and by convincing people, and it's the easiest thing to convince people of, by saying, you should reduce your accent to be more accepted.
Because it's your pain point. That's why.
Yeah, and
It's
I
your
also
pain
wonder,
point.
does she also tell them how to dress?
Probably not.
Does she teach them pragmatics of where they're going to go and work and how they should behave? And I'm
It's
quite.
like, the way I understand it, like she's telling me, if I were her client, she's telling me I have to first accept that I'm inferior, and
Yes.
then we can do something about it, so that I hide it and I pretend that I'm not, that I'm someone else. But this is just not on, is it?
No, it's totally, like, it's detrimental to the practice, especially when I'm sure that she knows what the problem is at the bottom, but she's using it as something to, market herself,
Well,
and then gain a lot of clients, because
yeah.
the whole world is thinking about that. But they don't seem to be making the connection. So wait a minute. I need to be diverse. I need to be different from all. We don't all want to sound the same. We want to be different. We're no globalization, and we want to be unique. And we have to sound the same. It just doesn't really match what we're trying to achieve in this world of, conserving identities. The LGBTQ communities are coming up, and they're professing their own
Yep.
rights. So how is it that speakers in general of the world are not coming up and say, this is who I am. I can be, I can be whoever I want to be. Shouldn't
Could it be
matter.
could it be that sometimes, like, we feel like we can't express ourselves well enough in that target language? Could it be that? Could it be part of the issue sometimes?
I don't know.
And
I think
also,
we have to make a whole different. If they're into certification and qualification, I think they have to make a sort of a, I don't know, even a decision to change how things are done and what qualifications they do give teachers out there,
yeah.
but also make it very. I mean, I've worked in a dozen of schools that never even asked me for any sort of my identity card, yes, but what qualifications do you have?
Yeah.
I never even have been asked the question.
Yeah.
So when you go to, you're a company, I've done a lot of company courses, and would you really want your company to be paying that amount of money for someone who's literally been taken off the street for the way they sound?
Yeah.
Because that is who I was. And I'm just bringing my own testimony to it, just to make you realize, just to make the listeners realize that that company, not me, I was getting paid like 11 euro per hour, but they were paying maybe 120, 130 euro for time with someone who did not know what phrasal verbs were, working in a very big international company. Just makes you put things into perspective, doesn't it?
Perspective. Yeah, it does totally.
Because no one questions who is the person in front of them, because they're so judgmental, like they are racist. It's called auditory racism, that you think something sounds the part, and so you're like, yes. It's a bit like, your Uncle
Yeah,
Joe can't do anything bad, can he? It's your Uncle Joe. But we know that we cannot stop at appearances, like we cannot stop at accents. We can't.
yeah,
We have to
exactly,
just dig
exactly, exactly.
dig a
You
little
just
deeper.
you just have to have an open mind, and I still think we are sometimes guilty of this ourselves. So
Totally,
it's just
totally.
it's just you just have to constantly think. You just question everything and
Yes, it takes a lot of
ask yourselves questions, and why am I doing this? What do I exactly need? And is this right? And keep asking these questions. Yeah,
it's a whole, I think anything that you really really want to learn at a deeper level, it really requires a shift in your mindset. That's what I think. And you really have to
totally.
start, if you want to change, how things are going,
And
what are things,
yeah,
how things are going in the world, you need to first change yourself.
it hurts. It hurts. Like I'm working on my marketing now, yeah, and it's exactly that mindset shift. And I have
Yes.
I have got these limiting beliefs, I have I was always negative about marketing, and now I can't be like that anymore, because if I am, I don't just portray that sort of, or I don't show that those right vibes, when I'm
Hmm. Hmm.
posting or making my videos, and I can't do that, because then it won't be effective if I do
Yeah.
that.
Yes. Well, there's
Yeah,
going to be you should have to keep my Instagram on site, because there's going to be an event very soon, like a summit that has been organized by a fellow teacher who's going to talk about specifically that topic. And many teachers are going to contribute, talking about, marketing in ELT as a non-native English speaking teacher. And I have put all my own content in there. So if you ever want to kind of dig deeper and understand why these things are, I think it's really, really relevant. It might not be the first thing you want to do when you wake up, oh, let's reflect on why this happens, or why do I have these limiting beliefs. But
yeah,
ultimately, I think it's necessary, because you can't even market yourself, you can't even sell a
no,
service if you yourself think,
yeah.
Jane is going to be better because her name is Jane, right?
In my opinion, it's difficult. If you come from one place, it's really difficult to get to that ideal, or to get to a state where it doesn't matter to you anymore. And like you're gonna laugh everything off. You're gonna have arguments against everyone who
Yes,
is
and
going
I
to.
speak about it also. Like I work in an international setting right now, and I wouldn't say it's very open to this topic, but I've made it clear. I've even shared my articles with them. I say this is wrong.
Yeah,
I don't care, honestly, because
yeah,
I know that I'm in the right and they're in the wrong for ever thinking whatever they're thinking. And I'm not going to hide because I want to comply to it. There's, the first chance I get, whenever this thing gets a bit, I'm going to even do more about it if I can. And
yeah,
another thing is that you really want to you really have to have that need and want to be part of this change. Like I
exactly.
would kick myself if the change didn't start with me, if I wasn't the one talking about it. I know it gets tiring and frustrating, and sometimes you don't want to have these deeper level
Yeah,
conversations. But I think that if I'm happy that I'm in the position that I can talk
same,
about it, and
same with
given
me.
the opportunity to
I-
do it.
you are marketing yourself like that. This is your Instagram handle again, the non-native speaker. You talk about it all the time, yeah.
All
So
the
I believe you specifically help teachers like me and English teachers who have.
Yes, I help everyone, and also anyone. I help my
Yeah,
neighbor. I talk about it to my neighbors, to anyone who's
yeah.
willing to listen.
That's
And
what I want to say. Like I talk about it myself, despite not being in your position, or not marketing myself like you. I do different things, but I still make sure that I incorporate it in the
yes,
things I do. So that's why I talk about this on this podcast. That's why I sometimes mention it to my students in my Discord group and so on. And
yes,
I know it may be sometimes annoying, and sometimes I get angry as well. There is this anger in me. But
totally.
do you have the
It
same
fuels
issue
you.
sometimes?
It
It's just
fuels you. People often
yeah,
tell me, Mary, oh, just don't stop being angry about it. Like, you have this
Yeah.
working for you.
Yeah.
This is good.
Same.
I'm like, it's okay not to be okay. I'm citing Jessie J here, right? It's okay not to be okay. I'm not. I'm glad. I'm grateful for what I have, but I'm not glad how things are
Yeah.
going. I
Same.
don't appreciate that I am still seen, under a negative light because I didn't choose where I was born. And if I had to choose again, I'd never, I wouldn't change
Yeah.
anything. I wouldn't change anything. I'm glad to be the person that I am. I have to be proud of who I am. That's my identity. That's the most precious thing you have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? Some like one of my students, she tells me that I should stop doing this to myself because I'm like she understands me completely. She's on my side. That's why
Mhm.
she's my student. But she says, you have to you have to tone it down a little bit because you are hurting yourself.
Yeah.
But I have to do this. Like I feel like it's my mission to
Yeah.
show it to people. I'm not gonna accept the status quo. So I'm for example, I am preparing a video on my for my YouTube channel called 10 reasons why non-native teachers are better teachers. It sounds very clickbaity. It will be controversial. I know that.
Yeah.
And I want to do it like that. And I need to do things like that, because if I
Happens,
don't,
you
like
have to-
it's
I did a reel of saying, top three mistakes that native speakers make. And I know where I'm going with it because I say, I give a disclaimer. I say why I'm saying this. I put it,
exactly. Yeah.
but I feel that, if you're going to say, on your little flyer 3-5 times that your teachers are native speakers and attract your customers like that, I'm going to then make something clickbaity and get
Yeah,
people to go to in the right direction. What you're
exactly.
doing is lying. What I'm
We
doing is informing.
I-
There's a big
I'm
difference here.
I'm doing it because we are in that position of those that are victims, right? Here, we are discriminated against.
Yeah.
So of course, I want to like spark some controversy, and you know, the idea is that I get maybe more subscribers and stuff like that. But ultimately, I do it because I'm angry.
There's
That's the
nothing wrong with
underlying
this.
reason. I do it because I'm not happy with the status quo, and I don't want to just do nothing. Right? I have to do something. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yes, but you have to like fight also that imposter syndrome that always
Yeah.
kind of gets out. Uh, Also, for you saying, why would you be sorry for wanting to? You don't have to be sorry for wanting to be more successful, have more subscribers. Everyone wants that. Does anyone want
Yeah.
less of? Oh, I want to be less rich. That would be
Mm,
great. I want to be less informed. And then
yeah.
we
Less
feel
famous.
sorry
No.
for wanting more. What's wrong with wanting more, especially when it's due? Like, you should be getting more because you have studied for it, you have invested effort, time, money,
And
uh,
taken risks. I have
and
taken risks
taken
as
risk,
well.
and having had people who come up to you and say, oh, I think you should tone it down a little. I will not. I've had fellow teachers tell it to
Never.
not about native speakers. And I'm like, have you read your contract? Have you read your contract? Have you seen what the school is about? You haven't, have you? You don't care because probably, or you haven't noticed because no one has brought your attention
Yeah.
to the elephant in the room. And maybe you haven't been hurt by that kind of talk. But I'm here reminding you, hello, no, this is not the way things should be. And you and I should be angry just the same. I shouldn't be more angry. We should be angry like at the same extent and the same level. I'm sorry.
Sometimes it's because people will never understand how you feel because they have never been in your shoes, right? So that I understand that part as well, but that doesn't prevent me from being angry and from talking about it. And it
Yes.
seems to be the same with you. It doesn't prevent you
No, it
from
has to. I think
doing
it
that.
fuels me. Sometimes I do feel angry. Sometimes I allow that to happen. Why shouldn't I feel angry? It's been 13 years I've been, facing this. I haven't had the same job for more than 1 year. I've
Yeah.
changed and changed, and people say that's great. Yes, I definitely like the fact that I've changed so much, and I had so many, but I've never had the guarantee of having, the next year something that I knew what was coming the next year, except for what I myself decided was coming next year,
Yeah.
right? So this uncertainty, yes, it has beneficial points, but it should be my decision. Why can't I have a constant position in a school based on my qualifications and my identity and people might say, "Oh, just move to this country that they have." What kind of a I'm sorry, it's really not empathic to say something like that to a person. You don't even know the situation the person might be going through. But the solution to all problems is not always move.
Yeah.
Because, the world is yay small or yay big, and we have to make things right. Put it,
Yeah. We have to fight. I agree.
I'm not supposed to live in Italy where my family lives, where I'm married to an Italian, because things are, and I have to go to another place. That no, Italy should come on board, get on board. That the fast train of understanding what they're actually. It cannot be a negative that I have studied the English language in Italy. It cannot be a negative because I'm in Italy.
Yeah.
If Italy says that to me, then Italy should review their education system.
Exactly. Exactly, Mary. And I think you're like Nelson. You're like, for me, you're like Nelson Mandela for non-native English teachers.
Oh
Or
my God!
no, honestly, like this is what you need to do. You need to. Some people need to sacrifice themselves almost. I
Mm.
would go as far as to say that,
Honestly, this is
because
like
we are putting ourselves in a vulnerable position. Let's be honest. Let's be brutally honest about that. But if we don't do that, and yes, that anger, maybe that's sort of like eating us from inside or whatever you may call it. But then if we feel like we have to do it, let us do it. Let us do it.
totally. If you're a doctor,
Yeah.
you're a doctor from anywhere. A doctor is a doctor. An English teacher should be an English no matter where they got their education from, and where that is not good enough, then that country's education system is in the wrong, because
I mean,
they already know that they're not giving you the best service. So it's not on you; it's
if
on them.
if you help me, if you are my doctor and you help me, I don't care where you are from. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what your sexuality is. I don't care what your
You
accent
need the
is.
pain to go away.
Care about All I care about is, can you help me or not? Okay. And that's, I think that's the note to to end this podcast on. And
Yes.
it's been fantastic to have you here, Mary, and
Likewise.
keep doing what you are doing. And
I
please,
will.
everybody follow Mary, the non-native teacher on sorry, the non-native speaker on Instagram.
Yes. Thank you
Fantastic,
very much.
fantastic, Mary. Uh,
Forward to our future chats together.
Absolutely. Take
Thank you.
care and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.